Hello, hello, and welcome to this week's influential live show. I'm your host, Stacey Rasky, and today's topic is a hot one, really, where so many leaders, so many of the people I talk to struggle with balancing maintaining their own identity while being in service of others, being in service of their relationship, being in service of the ecosystem that they're creating, being in service of their clients, whatever the situation is, right? It boils down to what I call the me versus we. And it can be quite a challenge. It can be quite a challenge to be authentic as a leader, to bring your all, to be emotionally available, create the safety, have the boundaries, to be of highest service to everyone and not lose yourself. And this is such a challenge because so many of us high performing leaders are very all or nothing. Yes. Give me the likes, give me the loves if you're like, oh yeah, been there, know how easy it is for us to fall into the all or nothing trap. And so I'm going to highlight a couple of scenarios, and I'm going to I'll just use myself as the example, right? So obviously I talk about boundaries all the time. If you know anything about my story, you know that the reason I've over time become that boundaries expert is because I myself had none. Had none. And that was why things were very all or nothing, because it's like, okay, well, I don't know what a boundary is. I don't know how to kind of be in this gray area. So it's just the extremes. And, some of that perfection and the control issues as well, that a lot of us high performers with some of those ADD, ADHD tendencies. Yes, those of us who struggle with focus or high visionary or just very have a lot of that drive, right? A lot of that energy to create whatever that looks like, right? Whether we're creating empires, creating money, creating opportunities, or stinking cat hair on my eyelashes. Ugh, nice. The joys of pets, but I digress. So, or we're the creative where we're making art or social media imagery or music or writing books, whatever it is, right? Creating content, all the things we create. So, in the early days of my journey, I had no boundaries. So it was it was showing up fully as the control issues for myself. So it was a lot of the constantly taking on responsibility for things that were not mine, right? All worrying about all the shit that's not mine. What are other people doing? What are they saying? How do they feel? Right? Hello, people pleasers. And not only are we worrying about all that shit, but in the mix, right? What gets lost? All of this, right? We're not taking care of ourselves. It's the one relationship we never nurture is the one with ourselves. So, we inherently, if you've ever had boundary issues, struggle with identity. It's just an absolutely crazy common consequence for those of us who were raised and not in situations where we didn't have boundaries, and especially if there was any sort of trauma, hardship, instability, where a lot of that focusing on other people was a trauma response, trauma response, or not just the trauma response, but like stress response, right? And I do use those interchangeably because I think people who didn't have like big T trauma in their lives don't always realize like there were some traumatic things that happened that create those same responses. So, it at its core, big T, little t doesn't matter. What's happening is it's creating that fight or flight, freeze or fawn stress response. And That's why we focus on other people. And, this is survival mechanism. It's our ways to create safety. So that's why we learn to develop a lot of those walls that usually are the control issues to survive. So, because we're so focused on all of these external things, we don't learn how to build a relationship with ourselves. So, what happens fundamentally is our identity becomes tied to all of these external things, right? It's those of us who were the high achievers eventually become the high performers, and yet can still struggle with separating ourselves, the identity of who we are, from those external things, right? The labels, the roles, the income, the stuff, the being a parent, being a spouse, being a business owner, separating from the income we make, the titles we have, all the different things. It used to be grades, it used to be sports, it used to be all those different performance related things were what our identity was attached to. And then for people such as myself, who struggled with, again, a lot of those control issues, one of those ways that came out in terms of the external identity was a way that I would measure myself was the size of clothes that I wore and the weight on the scale, or the number on the scale. And so, it's how we get things like eating disorders, right? And can create a lot of those self-destructive habit loops as well, those self-punishment cycles, but that'll be a whole nother thing. So everything about our identity has been measured externally. So what happens is we get into a leadership position and we either recognize we don't have boundaries and we need to implement them, right? Case in point, as many of you are here for that. But also, as we start implementing boundaries, it can be very all or nothing. And it's like, okay, how do we find that happy medium? And you know me, I don't want to say balance. Balance is bullshit, because then we're trying to balance an equation and it just doesn't work. There's no X equals whatever. Doesn't work. But creating the harmony where you can show up fully and authentically yourself and be in service of the whole, that we, the collective, the business, the marriage, the family, whatever the we is that we're referring to. Because remember, how we do one thing's how we do everything. And not lose our identity, not lose ourselves as we open up to new opportunities. And so this is one of those key boundary challenges. So back to my story. So obviously no boundaries at all, always focusing on everything else. Not my job. Total shit show, right? So I start implementing the first semblance of boundaries, which was all or nothing. So where before I focused on taking care of everybody else and not myself, right? We see this a lot of that hashtag be selfish. We need to empower ourselves to take the first steps. And it is a bit selfish. It is a bit all or nothing as we're starting to build the muscle of focusing on ourselves. And, it may feel a bit selfish. We may need to own that it is for a purpose of I have to take care of me and prioritize me. And it's okay to call it selfish. It's okay to feel uncomfortable with it. Maybe even a little bit of that self-judgment, right? And so we're trying to, I see a lot of people saying, hey, be selfish and it's okay. And the key is softening the emotions when we're first stepping into that space, right? Because really at the end of the day, if we're saying it's selfish and that's a negative, right? Remember, we're just judging something that's uncomfortable. And it's part of the old programming and paradigms, right? That said, no, don't take care of yourself. Prioritize everybody else. Sacrifice yourself. So I started the total 180, which was, well, I'm going to stop taking care of everybody else and start taking care of me. It was all or nothing, which was not necessarily the most effective nor the healthiest for a long-term relationship like a marriage. Not so good. At some point, Jeff will let me interview him on my podcast and tell you all about it. Talking about lifting the veil, right? I mean, I'm always transparent with you guys, so I think it would just be funny to get fun to get his perspective and really, sharing the other side. So it was painful. It was all or nothing. I pretty much shut down for doing much for anybody else and just prioritized me because I only had so much bandwidth anyway. And so it was like, okay, well, now it's completely on me. And over time, as I started to learn the skills of boundaries, I'm like, okay, it doesn't have to be all or nothing. I can build these skills. Because remember, right? I'm always talking about boundaries as a skill set. It's something we learn. We got to practice. It's going to be uncomfortable. It's going to be awkward. We're going to suck at it. Sometimes we're not going to hold to our boundaries, but we're going to see it. We're like, oh God, it feels terrible. It's just all a learning in action, like any new skill, learning a new language. We'll just call it that. You're learning a brand new language, the language of boundaries. And it's a little bit before you're fluent in conversation. So the more I got comfortable with boundaries, the better. Yet every time I'm stepping in outside of my comfort zone and going into new territory, going into bigger and bigger opportunities, right? As a leader, as a business owner, the bigger the opportunities that I get as an impactor, as my businesses grow and scale, as my team expands, these are all opportunities for me to recalibrate my boundaries. And over time, there's a point where we are hitting the exponential growth curve, right? We can handle the growth and sort of navigate that. But then there's what we're going to scale. And so the size of everything that we're doing becomes bigger. It becomes more significant. And this can be in our marriage that we hit that growth point that things are getting really fast. Our relationship, the dating, the nurturing, the communication has to keep up. It happens in our businesses. It happens in a variety of ways. It even happens in our health, if we're doing big health transformation goals. So for me, where I'm seeing this showing up the most right now is actually at home in my marriage. But again, how we do one thing is how we do everything. So everything that I'm leaning into and learning in my marriage to be a leader at home, co-lead with my husband as we lead ourselves and lead each other in this relationship and really moving the needle forward and scaling our relationship to match the vision that each of us has individually, but also what we have together. Because there's the co-creative vision. And then each of us individually, we have our visions of where we want to go as individuals, right? And we've got to get all of that blended together. And the reason I'm focusing at home is because it's even harder. It's more intimate space. Like it's easy for me at this point to do what I need to do as a leader and not lose myself, my identity in service of the whole, right? I can navigate communication with my team and say, yes, I can be really stubborn and hard-headed and still listen to the needs of the group. Sometimes I'm going to be like, well, I still feel like this is what we need to do and I'm going to do it anyway. We've got to weigh things out. And then there's other times where it's like, okay, I can defer to the wisdom of the whole and the group and say, I'm going to follow what you guys are saying because I think that is a better option or that makes more sense right now, right? So it's navigating and balancing the communication and the engagement with our team. And not taking it personally, right? So I don't feel like ever within the context of our empire do I feel like I am losing my own identity. It's doing well, but it's easy for us to do that, right? We could say, okay, I'm coming to work. I want to be the authentic leader. I'm bringing me. But what we don't even realize is we're being so authentically ourselves that there's no flex, there's no give and take, there's no space for the we. I'm so me, but I'm not taking into account the team. And that's where I've talked about it before, about needing to be able to listen to others and actually, as the highest level leader, be able to get on their world map. How are they choosing to communicate? What's their love language? What's their communication style? So we adapt to match them, right? Because we as leaders need to be able to accommodate the we, the collective. This is a lot harder the more intimate we go. So at home, that's always been the challenge, right? So for those of you who maybe you're the really driven one in the relationship, and it can be really frustrating when your partner is not doing their personal growth and development journey. Anybody know what that's like? Maybe you're the slower moving partner, right? But if you ever feel that disconnect where like one's way ahead and one's kind of slower in their journey, or their journey just looks really different, it can cause some of that friction, some of that disconnect, because there's literally a separation. And this is where it can become kind of tricky, because it's like, okay, I'm doing my work on me and I want to be true to me as an individual, as a leader, as somebody who's doing my work on my journey, my way. And we care about our partner, the we. So it's navigating and balancing the boundaries, right? How can I respect myself? I hold true to my identity, right? Respect my goals and my vision, and respect the relationship, respect the marriage, respect the we and what we're creating together. How can I respect their journey at their pace without judgment, allow it to be, while respecting my own, right? Because it starts getting into some tricky waters, right? Because if you've got boundaries and you've got standards, where's that gray area where it's like, okay, I can be patient and allow my partner to catch up, or elements within our businesses, right? Allow certain things to catch up. Or is it us lowering our standards, right? It gets to a tricky bit of mindfuckery there. Like, I know what I am worthy and deserving of in a relationship. Are we willing to allow the relationship we have, again, personal or professional, because they're all the same situations are happening. Are we allowing people in our ecosystem to catch up? Are we allowing things within reason, right? This is where things start getting tricky in the boundaries. This is like super advanced boundaries training today. Super advanced boundary training, right? Because you've got to know your identity. You've got to know your worth, your value, right? Like, think about it in sales. How many of you are like, yeah, but you're my friend. I know you, so I'll give you a discount, right? You've given me so much emotional currency and social capital being in my ecosystem that I don't need the monetary exchange quite so much, right? But regardless, it's knowing your value. So you're willing to adjust, right? While holding true to your value and allowing space for others, the we, the collective, the goals. So, versus coming in and steamrolling or bulldozing everybody around you. And we can do it as leaders in our businesses. We can do it at home, right? Those are the conversations my husband and I have been having lately is, you know what? I am a strong personality, right? Strong visionary. So any of those times, historically, the stronger my vision got. And during times where he was really struggling, well, things are going to move forward no matter what. So I'm just going to follow my vision until he gets one. It is an adaptation. It is a coping mechanism. And at the same time, it was not necessarily creating enough space for the we, right? We can do the same thing in our businesses when we hire a team. We hire a team wanting their input, and yet we're so used to running the show, it's easy for us to steamroll them because we want a we here, but we're not ready to work as a collective in our emotionally or spiritually, right? Like mentally, we like the idea of it, like we get it logically, but we're not allowing ourselves the experience. And so, we're going to see these things showing up because, right, we know we've got to lead ourselves. We're going to be able to lead at home before we could ever lead a revolution in the world. Because how we do the one thing is how we do everything. So today's conversation is really about observing yourself. And where are those areas where you're noticing that the identity of who you are as a leader is hitting up against these opportunities to work as a team, work as a collective, working as a group, right? Is it a me versus a we? Or is it me showing up in service of the we? Whether this is at home, in our businesses, with our clients, or out in the world. Because I will say, I have seen people do it with their clients too, where they steamroll their clients, that they're saying they're showing up to be in service. I've been steamrolled as a customer when I got sold to, right? And I'm not bringing any victim energy. I was functioning, my decision-making was coming from a place of fear. And the responsibility on the other side was I was sold to, right? I was not their ideal client, but they cared more about the money. So they were in service of the me and not the we. So there's all of these opportunities where we get to bring this discernment, where it's about showing up as the best you, knowing who you are, so full, confident, clear, aligned in your truth, your identity, your confidence, that you show up without need or greed to manipulate the situation to subvert the we. And instead, you're so full, no need, no greed, nothing missing, that it's in full service of the we, where you're elevating, inspiring those around you to be better. You're working together as a team to co-create something amazing, whether this is in your marriage, whether this is with your kids, a relationship with anybody else, or with your team, with your clients. How are you showing up? And the more clear you are on the identity, the foundation, and having enough self-awareness to see where are these moments where you are hitting up against the collective, the faster you'll be able to change and adjust to be a better you and a better leader and improve performance and profit at the end of the day. You're going to improve team cohesion and communication because you're showing up fully and have that flexibility for the group. And it's been a tough pill to swallow. I'm like, okay, I know taking a step back and really evaluating my marriage and how I'm showing up there is massively going to help me accelerate how I'm showing up to work with my team and with my clients. So I'm focusing there because it's going to improve everything. So it's eating that slice of humble pie, or the whole humble pie, right? To be like, oh yeah, I thought I was doing better than I was. And it's okay. We're going to have those oh shit moments where we're like, oh yeah, I'm having to accept that reflection and look in the mirror and say, wow, I have steamrolled some situations here. I know why. It's creating safety in, right? That trunk goes back to that stress response, that trauma response. If things are not clear, if things don't feel safe, I'm one of those personality types, as many of us are, as driven people, to swoop in and solve the problem, right? Hello, control issues. And there's really subtle ways that we do that. And so it's getting this awareness, getting this understanding of who we are, how we're showing up, and how we desire to lead, and how are we engaging with others and navigating the identity, not losing myself while fully being in service of the we, whatever that is, right? So instead of it being me versus we, it's me in service of we. Big, big difference. So I would love to know what your biggest takeaway was from today's chat. You know, this is what we specialize in, right? This is about scaling leaders to scale their impact. If this is the stuff you know you need to get dialed in for the big things you're working on in 2023, creating a high performance leader, high performance teams, all of this communication and at home, and creating the high performance culture to increase productivity and profit while being in an amazing community, you know who to talk to. It's Influential. So we've got so many different options, whether we're talking systems and processes and very tactical with our agency, scaling your impact and expert credibility, being the authority because you get your book out in 90 days or less. And we do the publishing and the bestseller book launch. The Alpha Leadership Experience, our flagship program, our mastermind in this amazing community, or even our academy, right? We've got our accountability program. We've got the courses, all of those elements, right? So there's something to fit every lifestyle, every legacy, every leadership aspect of your journey. We have something to support that because we're all working together to be the leaders we're called to be and impact to the world. And honestly, at the end of the day, it's truly about having a legacy so strong. What we've done as a collective becomes legendary. So I hope today you got some gold nuggets. Like I said, share those in the comments and hit me up in the DMs. Send me a message if you want to chat and learn how to get an invitation to work with us in one capacity or another. Enjoy. Remember, as always, you are enough. I'll see you next week in the live show. Take care.